perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Today's topic, as you can see, is generating and constructing arguments. And so if you have been debating for a while or if you've just started debating, it's going to be useful for you anyways. So make sure to take notes, right? And with that, let's start. Can you turn the slide?
Yep. Now, the main things we're going to be covering in this section are just the basics of an argument. Is what is an argument, the definition of an argument, and how you construct an argument. What are the things that you should be looking at the very beginning of the thing. In addition to that, steps to an argument, uh, how to build an argument. Then they have the drills, interactive practice, and question and answer. That's at the very end. We have the logical flow, which is something very important you should always pay attention to, and the steps to generate a claim. A claim is something we spoke about in a different session long ago, but we will do it again. And that's the things we're going to be covering this session. And we have some key points to remember while forming an argument. If we read the thing saying at the top, arguments are at the core of any debate. It's relatively easy to come up with an argument, but a lot of important steps are involved in making strong winning arguments. As we know, everyone can come up with an argument. It's quite easy, but it does not always work that way. Uh, that your argument is winning. That's why we have winners and losers in debates. So it does not work every single time. Sometimes you need to build it in a specific way so that it can be understood by the judges, by the opponent in the other team, or by your teammates even. When an argument is not built in a specific way, sometimes it can just be random. I'm not saying it's gonna cause you to lose, not necessarily, but if you're not building in a specific way, sometimes it can be hard for the judges to decide or to understand what you're really.
Wait, hey Naz, I can't really hear you. Wait, hey, yeah, Govind, can you hear what Naz is saying? Oh, he just left. Okay,
I
sorry about
think no, I think the presentation kind of
that.
stopped. Okay.
Yeah, I think it froze. Let me just check real quick. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, I can.
Okay then. Right. So we'll just start from here then. Okay, so it's just we and you here, so make sure you answer, yeah? Okay, so first let's just consider this motion here that this house would make debating compulsory for all students in secondary school, right? So let me give a sec. Okay, there's more people. Cool. Right, so we're here right now, where the motion is that this house would make debating compulsory for all students in secondary school. So I want any one of you to just come up with arguments, right? Ignore what's written there and just come up with your own arguments real quick. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. So just think about it. And whatever comes to your mind, it's fine. And Govind, if you're ready, you can just unmute anytime. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have three arguments. All three are against this motion. So my first argument is that it takes away and it strips away the individual agency that every student has. So basically, that's kind of very totalitarian of schools to force every single student to go into debating, irrespective of the fact that whether they have dysmorphia regarding their public presentation or they do not want to publicly present themselves at large forum. So that neglects the individual which wishes of each student and it kind of forces it onto them. My second argument, it takes away time from every single student's schedule and they will not be able to like collectively, I mean, they cannot devote the time as they want to and they'll not be able to focus on the activities they would actually like to. So it's another element of agency, yes, but this time it cripples them so that they cannot do any other activity, which in the time that they're debating. My third argument is regarding the fact that debating is just like an art. It's like any other art form. So the more people you have in debating, irrespective of the fact that whether they're good or not, the quality of the overall debating community it comes a little downwards. And irrespective of the fact that they're learning, those who are learning against their will not actually contribute to the field. And it's like we have more quantity of debaters, but the quality of debaters will go down.
All right, those are pretty good arguments. And Naz, would you like to add something here? Or should I just move on then?
Yes, what I'm trying to say is he had a very good argument, and again, making the thing compulsory will make it, in very simple terms, will make it overrated. As you said, it's an art, so that would kind of lower the quality of debating, and that's just his point of view. I think it's very good. You
Yeah,
can
very
continue
good.
with that.
Right, but uh, the arguments were good, but they were missing a few things to that would make it a winning argument. That's exactly what we're going to cover in this session. So, okay, let's just take this example, which is proposition argues that debating improves academic outcomes, and that studies show that 60% of students who debate get into really good colleges after they graduate. If we make debating compulsory for students in secondary schools, then most students will be able to get into better colleges. Therefore, we should make debating compulsory. But now this argument is missing something. Uh, Govind, can you like take a guess what it is?
Yes, I think it
Uh,
would be best if you go back to the second slide or the third slide, maybe, so he
yes.
can. Yeah.
Mhm. In my view, that argument is missing a little credibility. Like we don't know what studies they're talking about. We don't know like the sample size of those studies. And even if that is the case, debating for the sake of getting into a college is not really debating. That is very performative. So that is also a point to consider.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
that
what you, yeah, again, adding to what you said, it's a passion. It's more of a passion thing. You can't force people all to like play sports, for example, right?
yeah,
You need
Precisely.
to have such passion for that. Same with debating, I think.
yeah.
That's very.
So now that was a button there. So what I was asking is that what was missing, and you actually mentioned that, so that's pretty good. So basically, what this is missing is that, yeah, it's basically missing the reason, right? It gives us a fact, yeah, as it says that 60% of students show, who get into students, but that then it doesn't really explain how. It doesn't give the reason for that. And so now when we have the new argument, it's the same argument, it has reasoning in it. So I'm just going to read that again as well. So it says that debating requires participants who analyze complex issues, consider multiple perspectives, and construct construct a, one second. Yeah, arguments. This process sharpens critical thinking and analytical skills, which are essential for academic success. Experience enhances their public speaking and communication skills, and then all that stuff, right? So basically, what was missing is that it was didn't have a reason. It didn't give us how, and that's the first part, which is and then we move on to the first part, which is the real world implementation, and we'll also take a example motion in this, and which is this house would make voting compulsory. So Govind, I'll give you another 2 minutes if you could come up with solid arguments for this proposition and opposition both.
Yeah, this is also something we spoke about long ago, which is not a claim, but I like to call it a goal. A goal is like steps you need to follow, which is similar to what you just named, the implementation. There has
Yeah,
to be like some steps. If you support something, shouldn't you have some sort of plan for it to continue doing it? First step, the second step. We think this is working because if we do this, then we do this, it's going to result in this. And if we don't like it, and if this is going to happen, or the implementation plan, specific implementation plan, it's not going to work because the results are negative, for example.
yeah,
That's
exactly. So this is what we call in debating a logical flow. We'll discuss about this later, so with exemplary motion as well. But yeah, so Govind, whenever you're ready, you can just unmute and go for it. Yeah.
if you also look at this motion, you can see that it's very general, like it's not specific. So we can speak about many things. It's very broad, very general. You can construct many arguments as you want.
Right. So my first argument is that there's a certain level of civic sense and responsibility that goes with the formation of any government. So any government, it stands upon the fact that people are willing to put their faith and their responsibility in it, and that's how they're able to govern. So for people, if people don't vote, then that public trust is automatically eroded. So we need people to vote so that the government actually represents what the people stand for. Coming to representation, that the voter turnouts this year, 2024 has been a historic year for elections. So there have been over, like, most of the countries in the world have had their elections, and one of them was US. So the voter turnout went from 62.8% to 59% in the US. That just shows like how less people are voting in the general disinterest that people are having in voting. We need to invigorate people so that they vote more and they educate themselves more on political issues. And like a direct result of that could be shown by the actual presidencies. Like the people who have not educated themselves, they do not vote, and then that causes a level of political instability, which leads to the election of people like Donald Trump. So there's a direct pipeline from education to voting. And by trying to encourage people to vote, we encourage them to think about political issues in the first place.
Yeah, great. So if I ask you this question, what would you add? Could you go back?
Oh, sorry.
If I ask you this question, what would you add to this motion to make it more specific, to make it more engaging? Like if let's
Yeah.
pretend that we're having a debate. What would you add to this motion right here to make it like more engaging?
Yes, definitely. First of all, I would add age. So,
Yes, yes,
this
that's what I
house
was
would
saying.
make voting
Yep.
compulsory for the ages of like above the ages of 18. And
Maybe,
other than that, hello.
maybe a specific education, like a bachelor's degree or something.
Yes. Or second, that was the second point. It was also like the motion would also make like this house believe that voting should be compulsory for all educated people as well, so that they know and they have like a certain level of know-how regarding the political sphere.
Right, that's perfect actually. Right, but okay. So yeah,
Kunwar, I think there's someone trying to join.
wait, I don't know if you see that.
I don't know.
Wait, I'm making a co-host. Yeah, here you go.
I don't
So
see anyone.
yeah, me neither. So right, you actually nailed this first part actually about the real world implementation. And so I'm actually just going to move on to the second point, which is comparative arguments. And we just take this motion again, right? So again, to make winning arguments, basically you need to make your arguments comparative, right? So direct comparison to the other side. For example, in this we have that, making voting compulsory results in better policies for people. This is the claim, and it says that in the process of making voting compulsory, the government should. Let's just focus on the bold part here. fine people who fail to vote. Right. So, and again, I wanted to focus on that bold part, which says that on our side, people are incentivized to vote to avoid paying fines, which results in more voting. Whereas on other side, people can continue to fail to vote regardless of access and information. This means more people voices are heard, and politicians that are elected are likely to be representative and responsible to the needs, and therefore making voting compulsory therefore results in representative governments and better policies. So as you can see, this is a direct comparison to the other side. So, right, so basically, if you have a claim X and that claim X is having Y effect, right? So your side has a Y effect, but then you can also mention that if this X is not implemented, it would have Z effect, and then you have to prove why Y is better than Z. I hope that was a good explanation there. Uh, Moving
Yes.
on. And okay, we're just going to go over another motion, which is this house would mandate a four-day work weeks for private organization. And well, I was thinking I was just gonna read this, but you're doing pretty good, Govind, so I'd like to hear more from you. So take another minute, think about this motion.
Right. So my first argument is that private organizations and with the rise of capitalism that has been prevalent in the world and in the amount of billionaires that the world has produced over the past 5 years, we've noticed a general rise in capitalism, and that does not come at any authentic behest. The reason why those people are becoming billionaires is because of the workers that are working in every single factory there. So for private organizations to actually like prevent the exploitation of workers that is happening in factories and workspaces in all these places, we need to make sure that the workers are having a manageable amount of labor. Most private organizations cross the cross that, and they cross into 10 or 11 hours per day, which makes it a very hostile workplace, not just for the workers themselves, but the managers, as they have to extort the workers to get the work out. So to prevent the exploitation of workers, that's number one. Second argument is that as people who are not consumed by the capitalist machinery, we need to ensure that the workers have more to look forward to in their lives than just work. So trying to have a lesser work week would ensure that the workers are actually focusing on other areas of their life, and that we're not just reducing people to two hands in a factory.
Yeah, so those are pretty good arguments. But if I ask you what the impact, what is the importance of each argument, can you explain that as well? The impact.
Yes.
Yeah.
So on our side, if we mandate a 4 week workday, we have noticed that the workers will have the better health, physical and mental. They are more able to invest in their hobbies and they're more able to, I mean, they're better able to manage their personal lives and with their families. So that has been like absent in the other side, which is mandating a 5 day work week, which leads to a difference in about 10 to 12 work hours every single day, considering that considering most private organizations are making their workers work more. And the other impact that can be felt on our side is that we are having a more qualitative and approach to work, where we are encouraging workers to spend more quality time rather than just hustle through the week. Those are two
Yes, that's very
impacts.
good. If I could simplify all of this, if you want to make an argument good, you should basically make it more justifiable. You need to justify your argument to the judges. If I was a judge and I hear you saying this, I want to be convinced, okay? It's
Mhm.
not always about sticking to the rules or just constructing the argument. It's sometimes more about convincing them. You need to justify it. It's not about, and also don't go too far and start to like attract people emotions. That's what some debaters do. They focus too much on emotions, and some of them focus too much on the construction itself. But I think you should do a mixture of those two. Try to convince, justify your argument, and add more impact. Focus on the impact too much. Yep. More
Yeah, so
like a more like a lawyer. Do you know what a lawyer does? He convinces people
Yeah.
things. He tries to convince the panel, convince them that this person is innocent. Uh, if we let this man go, he's not gonna do it again, and we have evidence. That's what kind of it is. Yep.
Yes,
Right? So basically
exactly.
proving how your impact is greater than the opposition's impact. And that's what makes a winning argument, which is exactly what this is. And I think we were pretty good, so I won't really read. But now we have the steps to generating claims. So Naz, would you like to take this?
Identify stakeholders. Stakeholder is a person, group, organization that has interest, concern in an organization, can affect and be affected by the organization action, objectives, and policies. Well, first of all, a claim is similar to a goal, as I said. A claim is something you stand for, something you fight for. Okay? If we look at the topic, for example, at the bottom, would not send first-time non-violent offenders to prison and instead give them community-based punishments. If we say that we're going to go for the topic of this one, who is the stakeholder in this one? Could you please tell me?
Right. So the stakeholders, first of all, is the general populace who is at the threat of the harm the criminals are bringing, and second, are the criminals themselves.
Yes, so we go fight for that person. Basically, that's what a stakeholder is.
Yes.
Similar to the term stakeholder in real life, in business. A stakeholder is someone who stakeholder, you know what it is. So you're gonna
Hmm.
fight for the person. You try to like defend this person as much as possible. It could be a person, it could be a group, an organization. It should have interest in the main thing you're fighting for. Therefore, you try to like bring claims related to this organization or to this group of people, justify their action, justify the thing, justify the claim, and at the same time create an implementation plan or a goal, something you need to follow on this one. And second, we have identify effects on stakeholders. This is what we spoke about, the impact, the effect on the stakeholder. If this thing happens, what's going to happen next? If this thing does not happen, what's going to happen? Try to mention as much stuff as possible, the pros and the cons, the negatives and the positives, as much as you can. And third, we have group, where you think stakeholders go together.
Yeah.
Can you speak
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, so we'll be covering this. So basically, okay, first let's move back to the second point, identify effects. So you got two of the stakeholders, right? The families and sorry, the people and the criminals themselves. Could you just tell like what this motion, if it was to be implemented, what effect would it have on them?
Right. So if this motion if this motion is implemented, first of all, we are reintegrating the criminals as part of the community by giving them community-based punishment. So the families or the people who are at the risk of being harmed, they themselves begin to see the criminals the level of sympathy, and they inculcate these people as part of their community, which kind of results in a more public trust in these people, which although that can be used either for or against these families or the people themselves, but that I mean, we need to find a study which shows that this would benefit them. Second, as for the criminals themselves, they begin to see the trust that has been given into them by the people, and they see punishment as something more constructive rather than destructive. So that, in a sense, it enriches them as humans, and it reduces the rate of recidivism or reoffending.
Yeah, but another important thing you should pay attention to is the comeback from the other team. You provide like enough evidence that if we do this, they're not gonna do it again. But what if the other team brings some sort of strong evidence that most of the first time non-violent offenders, they end up doing it the second time? So you need to be ready for that comeback,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so right, the third is group where things stakeholders whatever, which will be covered in the next slide real quick. Uh, so yeah, these are the four steps. So okay, I'll just go over them, right? So, stakeholders, yes, the non-violent criminals, like you mentioned, but now other stakeholders would be the violent prisoners, society, which you already mentioned, the prison guards, employers, personal rehabilitators, families, communities with crime, gangs in prison, gangs outside prison. And so now, if we go over the effects of on each one of them, right? So, for example, on the non-violent criminals themselves, they're less likely to become violent. And then, for example, I'll take gangs in prison. They'll be not be able to recruit violent, non-violent offenders because, as you would know, prisons have inside internal gangs as well. And if you're sending more people in there, right? So there will be more people to recruit for those gangs, and when once these gangs recruit these non-violent criminals, they tend to become more violent. So that's even worse offense, right? And then basically third is where group where you think stakeholders go together. And what I mean by this is basically the common effects, effects that really go together, right? So for example, the first is the non-violent offenders and gangs and prisons and employees. So if you just read those effects, that non-violent offenders, the effect is that they're less likely to become violent because of prison, uh, more likely to have relevant skills if it is implemented. But if they do grow to likely to become violent. Why? Because of the gangs and prisons, because they'll be able to recruit those people. And but if they do not go to jail, they'll be able to do community service. They'll be able to get themselves to reintegrate into society, which would give them a chance to be employed. And that's why we employees there. And uh, in this whole scenario, the society altogether benefits.
Yes,
And
and you
then
should consider, yeah, and you should consider everything, literally everything. If you send them all to prison, that means that the government is gonna have more people in prison, therefore they have to spend more, right? All everything
Right.
should be, even that part. See, it's
yeah,
not
exactly.
obvious. It's not brought up in here. You can't see it here, but you should think about every single detail so that you can have a more powerful argument. Yep.
Because you want to be as unpredictable as possible if you want to win, right? And then at the end is that you create the claim. So again, I just read this, which is non-violent criminals are better integrated into society. Rehabilitation of violent criminals improves. Families of non-violent criminals are less likely in poverty, right? Which are pretty common. But see, so the here the claims are pretty common, right? And these claims are pretty predictable as well. But if you want to win, you need something which is very unpredictable. All right. And for that, what you need is basically what you need is a starting point, which is emotion itself, and then the ending point, which would here is non-violent criminals are better integrated into society, which was our first point. And so this is what Naz was saying earlier, the logical flow, right? As you can see, there are two strands. Let's just read the strand one, right? So basically, the first is that non-violent criminals serve community-based punishments. Because of this, what happens is that non-violent criminals interact with community and develop relationships. And because of this, people are more likely to understand these criminals, see them contribute. And then because of this, finally, perception of these criminals improves and criminals develop a community, which enables us to reach to the endpoint, which is non-violent criminals are better integrated. Right? So as you can see, it's if we talk in variables, right? So we have X, Y, W, Z. X is happening because of Y happens because of X, W happens because of Y, and Z happens because of W. I hope
Yeah.
that's
Yes. Thank you, Kunwar. The main trick is to connect the everything to the goal. The very first thing you mentioned at the very beginning of your argument, individually or as a team, I don't care. The very first thing you mentioned, everything after it should be connected to the first thing.
yep,
And every argument you bring, connect it to the first. That's how we do it. Bring something new and then remind them of the goal, remind them of the claim you have. You
exactly.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, and so you can read the green text here as well. And now these green texts are your comparisons, right? As we talked, the second point was to make comparative arguments. So, for example, the first argument presented is that non-violent criminals serve community-based punishments. But if we do send them to, but then if we send them to jail, what happens is that prisoners are exposed to harsh environments, which makes them, which because of which they join gangs for protection, and then they are more likely to stay longer because they're more likely to, commit more crimes inside the prison as well.
They normalize prison as part of their life, so they are like more likely to use it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Have an open mind and explore all possibilities, but don't get to the point where you start lying about reality, because the other team also understands.
yeah.
Sometimes you can't go over that limit of like coming up with stuff that's not real,
Mhm.
but you should explore all possibilities every time.
Yeah, you need to
Yes.
be as creative as you possibly can, right? So, yeah, so next up, we'll just do this, yeah? Uh,
Mm.
Govin, now I want you to create a claim, and then whatever we discussed till now, just, frame your arguments well. I'm going to give you 5 minutes because I want a proper claim and all the arguments in logical flow with all the comparatives and the impact.
Right.
So yeah. And if
Uh,
you're ready before that, just go ahead and unmute. Yeah.
sure. It's on the same motion, right? That
Yep.
community-based
Same
punishment.
motion.
All right. Yeah, right. So I would like to start.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, the fundamental change that is observed in the treatment of prisoners as people is underscored by community-based punishments rather than a hard prison life. So this shows people that they have chances for improvement and it enriches them as people, which in turn reintegrates them into society and reinforces the public's trust in them. So this reformation is not only social, but it also studies have shown this also implores them to undergo psychological transformation. So this incentivizes criminals to appreciate society beyond just the four confined walls of prison, and it motivates them to exit this vicious cycle of recidivism. Secondly, they contribute to society irrespective of their tenure duration, because even as prisoners, they continue to contribute to society because they have been instrumental in construction work, manual work, skilled or unskilled, or even sometimes skilled labor. So, for the sake of these petty crimes, petty criminals who belong from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, this affects their family. This benefits their family, and it helps them earn a living. So, because of this, they get motivated to employ themselves and again leave the cycle of crime. Studies have also shown that the median rate of recidivism for community-based punishments can go as low as 10%, while the rate of recidivism for hostile prison lives, such as those observed in Yemen, are up to 32%. Comparatively, the prisoners, which are often hardened to become more violent and antagonized in prison, and these give rise to conspiracy theories and join the underworld of crime more easily. So this also promotes the vicious phenomenon that is the prison gang recruitment. And it's recruitment. With recruitment, there also comes a strategic incentive for them to escape prison so that they can support their gang outside of prison and then come back in. So this necessitates a cycle of recidivism. Again, as to the question of whether this would actually, um, sorry. So again, as to the question, my opponent counter argues the fact that violent criminals can exploit this privilege and can again harm the world by the softer community-based punishments. Legislation definitely matters here. The Indian Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, it ensures that the petty crimes and non-violent crimes have been given this treatment so that we can figure out what can happen, and other avenues are definitely open for exploration of punishments.
All right, thank you for that. Right, so okay, so right, so as you mentioned about the lower class, right? But okay, so what would you do if someone from, say, middle class commits a non-violent crime? Then what happens?
Right. Even then, they are given opportunities to kind of support themselves by having, job opportunities in prison, as in like construction and manual work. Regardless of the fact, the first point still stands true that they undergo a certain level of moral posturing that comes out of community-based punishments.
Okay. Okay, and secondly, what h- how do you would you ensure that these non-violent criminals, right? So you've not put them in jails, but how do you ensure that they do not commit those crimes again, and especially more violent ones?
Right. So again, as I mentioned in the first point, so most of them have been shown to reduce recidivism by significant percentages. Second of all, psychologically, studies have found the fact that treatment of these prisoners as people ensures that society receives them faster, and they also get incentivized to leave prison faster and reintegrate themselves into society.
Okay, understood. Right. So, okay, now there's a view, right? So, basically, what I want from you is that, for example, you mentioned that point of Yemen and that percentage which you just called back. I also want you to put reason behind it, right? I want you to sh tell me how, right? Okay, sure. I understand that, these are these facts, but firstly, I do not know if those facts are true. So, I need a solid reason why this is the case. Can you understand that, right?
Yeah, I can try to. So, what happens in community-based punishments is that these prisoners and these non-violent criminals, they tend to form meaning beyond just prison life. So, they get motivated to not reoffend and to contribute more to society than just doing violent crimes. Most of them are doing it out of necessity. And the minute they start to see that there is more to life in society than just committing petty crimes again and again to sustain themselves, they see that what they are doing cannot land them in a better position than what they were before. So that is where they see the opportunity for improvement, and that is what leads to the reduction in recidivism.
Right. That was actually pretty good. That's what I wanted to hear. Uh, and rest was pretty good, pretty solid. I guess you've been waiting for a while now, yeah?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. So yeah, with that, I mean, you can use websites like Hello Motions to find these WSDC motions, or
Right.
plenty of other sites. And with that, we come to the end.